Hello, BookTube. I thought we'd talk about a few more May books in my ever-expanding May TBR, my ever-expanding May remit. For those of you who are new to the channel, I don't think there are many. I think that subscription has leveled off. But for those of you who might not have any idea who the heck I am, I'm a book critic. And we all pick the outlines of what kind of shape our reading is going to have. And the bulk of the outline of my reading is new releases in the American book market, in the 15 or 16 genres that interest me. That's a lot of books. That's more than I can read. I just do that as a kind of a goal. And so I keep an eye on the new releases for the month. May will have plenty of serendipitous reading. For instance, this thing that I absolutely cannot get enough of. I love this more than I had the last two times that I read it. It is so incredibly good. These books are so incredibly good. They really are worth a video on their own. Sean Stanfast is reading through the C.P. Snow sequence of novels, but I really ought to do a video on my own. And plenty of other stuff too, including the proceeds of a gigantic dragon hoard of books that I got just this week. But the bulk of my reading will be new releases, and I keep an eye on what's coming out in May. I thought I'd do another video on some May releases and just see the lay of the land, see what's out there, see what might interest you. We'll do a couple of comic book related things. There are a couple of gigantic, expensive, triple-digit omnibus editions of the types that Michael K. Vaughan likes to get and has millions and millions of. I don't usually get them because, as much as I love to see this stuff, get a really, really nice, heavy archival reprint. These are usually issues that I loved. The books themselves don't usually end up in very good format. That kind of an oversized 6-pound hardcover just really isn't convenient to read for me. But one of them is a big $100 omnibus edition of Daredevil. I think this is the second big hardcover omnibus of Daredevil. This has great artwork by Gene Colan. This is the issues that are incorporated here, I think there are about 30 of them. They are right about at the time when Colan got really great, started to really feel his way on Daredevil. Because in his initial issues on Daredevil, Gene Colan was very much trying to be an action panel-oriented comic book artist of the type that was, very popular at the time. It's not his foremost strength, and I think he knew it. He's very good at it, actually. It's the thing that he doesn't get enough credit for is that his action sequences, you feel them in your back teeth. But this is when he starts to graduate a little bit more than that, if I know what issues are in here. So it's tempting, but I don't think, unless I can get a copy from the publisher, I don't think I will yield to it. Then there's this thing. I don't know what I'm going to do with this book. I really don't. This is called Homegrown. The subtitle is Timothy McVeigh and the Rise of Right-Wing Extremism. That is a great topic. McVeigh is worshipped by the incredibly proliferating armed militia groups that are all over the American West and Southwest. They're absolutely everywhere. They're far bigger than the average citizen thinks they are. And, of course, they were activated by the former President Donald Trump and were directly involved in the armed insurrection to overthrow my government. Several of them have just been sentenced for seditious conspiracy. That's about as severe a topic as it gets in the American law books. The guy who sent them to do that, the president who told them to do that, so far has not been sentenced to anything for that crime. But it's, in other words, a fruitful subject. Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing and, Ruby Ridge and Waco and whatnot. It's an interesting subject. I would love to read it. It's the author who's the problem here. The author is Jeffrey Toobin. And I'm sorry if it makes me just an adolescent, but I cannot think of this guy anymore without thinking of the reason for his fall from grace. You used to see him on cable news talking head shows all the time, weighing in on various legal issues because he's a legal scholar and wrote a really good book on the Supreme Court. But then he had a fall from grace because he was on a Zoom call with a whole bunch of colleagues and took out his shadow docket. he exposed himself in a Zoom call and said that he had no idea. He was not aware that people could still see him. That's an obvious lie. He did it as a means of that was the whole arousal, was that he obviously knew that he was in front of other people. And he was kicked to the curb for that. He was dumped by a lot of the people who had been hosting him. And that need not be a moral consideration. That could be just a human nature thing. How on earth can you listen to this guy without thinking about that particular thing, about thinking about Little Tubin? How on earth can you think about him otherwise? And I thought, well, that'll be the last of that. He's doing all right money wise, so he won't need to. I won't need to worry about him being on a soup line. But I won't see him on the news anymore because I, like anyone else who would see him and knew that story, would not be able to think about anything of what he was talking about. We'd only be able to think about, are you going to be able to get through this broadcast with your hands on the desk? And then he started to make a comeback tour. He started to be on cable shows again. I think that's over, and I'm not quite sure that I know why. I'm not quite sure why that ended. America in 2023 is the land of the shameful comebacks that shouldn't happen. Unless there's a story there that I don't know about. But it seems to have stopped, but here he has a new book. And how am I supposed to read this book? It's an interesting subject, but how am I supposed to read it given who its author is? I mean, a book about homegrown armed militias and Timothy McVeigh, I'm not supposed to be giggling throughout that book, but I can't help but think that I probably will be. Anyway, then we have a political biography that I don't have high hopes for. I would love to see one of this figure, but I don't like the way this is packaged at all. I have a feeling that this is going to be more polemical than historical. This is by James Risen. I could be wrong. This is called The Last Honest Man. The CIA, this has the gigantic, unending, endless subtitle, which seems to be the price we're paying with U.S. books for them now having pretty good covers, is that in exchange for them having pretty good covers, we're now going to have pretty much the first chapter of the book as the subtitle. The subtitle of this one is The CIA, the FBI, the Mafia, and the Kennedys, and one senator's fight to save democracy. But the book is called The Last Honest Man. This is supposed to be some sort of political biography of Frank Church, who you would have to Google, who's a fascinating figure and well deserves a new book, but I don't know that this will be the one. We'll see. I don't know anything about the author, as far as I know. Then we have, this is new from Pushkin Press. Bless their hearts. They are so wonderful when it comes to adventurous publishing details. I guess this maybe is a new translation. Oh, no, wait. No, the cover says the classic biography now available in English for the first time. How could that possibly be? This is Nietzsche in Italy. Again, with a beautiful cover design. If this actually is ended up being the cover design, it's got the colophon of the press on the front there, so I'm assuming that it is. This thing is 100 years old almost. I guess it never occurred to me that it had never been translated into English before, but this is about Nietzsche in Italy. Nietzsche and, all of the lice that were leaping all over his body and all of the STDs that were coursing through his bloodstream and turning his brain to cheese. That Nietzsche. But this was really good. I don't think I've ever read it in English, so maybe that should have been my first indication that it had never been translated before. Well, good for the folks at Pushkin Press. Great. So those of you who think that Nietzsche is an interesting writer, first of all, snap out of it. But second, you're really going to want to read this book. It's been around forever. It's been commented on. There are books about this. But if you are an English-only reader, this will be your only chance to have read it. It's really good. It really is, regardless of what you think of Nietzsche. Obviously, I liked it. I can't stand the guy. And then we have, I think we've seen this on this channel before. This is Mariana Alessandri. This is Night Vision. A slim book of hers about dark moods, about hitting rock bottom, and how to get yourself through it, and how to see that that is not a failure on your part. That does not mean that you are somehow failing. These things are hardwired into human biology, and it certainly isn't anything that you should ignore, but it also isn't anything that you should beat yourself up about. Instead, you should be looking at, this author is a philosopher, just like Nietzsche. I hope not like Nietzsche. But the gist here is that instead of thinking, this shouldn't be happening to me, I should slap a nice face on this, or instead of indulging or even courting those negative behaviors as people in 2023 do so that they can talk about their mental health, a mental health day, mental health issues, etc., etc. You having hay fever, well, anyway. Instead of doing either one of those things, the author here proposes a whole bunch of thought exercises to get yourself through them, with the fundamental acknowledgement being that they don't last. You can get through them. They aren't going to last. They have another end that you can get out of. Then we have a new book by an author I love. Talk about credit at the Bank of Steve. This is a new book by David Quammen. I've recommended him on this channel endlessly. His books are so good. But I think this book is a return to his primary strength, which is short form work. He does long work. His last book was a book called Breathless about the COVID-19 pandemic. This is called The Heartbeat of the Wild, and its enormous, endless subtitle is Dispatches from Landscapes of Wonder, Peril, and Hope. And it's a collection of essays about encountering wildlife in Africa. And it's terrific. Kwame is so good. He is just, if you have not encountered him, he's exactly what I talk about when I say that nonfiction in talented hands is every bit as good or better than any kind of fiction. He's exactly the kind of author I'm talking about. And your library will probably have this book, or certainly you could request it from them and get in line for it. Then we have another big anthology volume. This one I'm far more tempted on. It's the third big $100 hardcover anthology of The Mighty Thor. It's my favorite Marvel superhero. And this takes us into a long period in Thor that I love. It has its downsides, but the strengths in these issues are great. Where I think it was Jerry Conway who was doing the writing, but it was John Buscema who's doing the artwork. And I went to Amazon to get what the cover of this thing is going to look like, and it just had a cover of one of the issues, Thor number 222, I think, or 222. A great Gil Kane cover, but I don't think that will be the cover of the volume. So I went to Marvel.com, and no hint of what the cover was going to be. So I went to Google and got a whole bunch of blank spaces. So I went just with cosplay Thor. Hottie cosplay Thor. Someday this little boy will be able to grow a beard. And it was a full Thor effect. I don't know what the cover of this thing is going to look like, but it will severely tempt me. Where these hardcovers usually don't, this one might. Except that I think all of these issues are in not only the hardcover Marvel Masterworks series, but also in Epic collections. So probably I'll just ooh and ah over it at the comic shop rather than get it. Then we have Ben Smith. This is Traffic. And this is his book detailing the attention wars between, I forget which the tech giants were. HuffPost and BuzzFeed, I think, or something like news aggregator, news eyeball sites like that, where their goal is only to make sure that you stay on the site. They have no journalistic standards whatsoever, even by the poor standards of journalistic ethics in the 21st century. They have none. They only want you to stay and upvote what you see. And in this book, the author contends that the war between those two websites was really ground zero for the fact that we all live in our own information silos. That you can routinely hear people say, well, my truth is, etc., etc. I love this kind of analysis of how the internet and internet giants have affected not only the fabric of our civil society, but our ability to think, our ability to assess the value of the information that our gigantic brains encounter. So this is right up my alley. A lot will depend on how this author tells the story. I don't think I know this author's work. And then we have a big dual hardcover that I have seen. I saw Sean the Book Maniac was interested in this. I've seen a couple of critics who were interested in this. I originally dismissed it, but I'm a biddable creature, and I was going to read it anyway. I just don't know that I was going to prioritize it. This is by Johnny Steinberg, and it's called Winnie and Nelson, Portrait of a Marriage, Nelson and Winnie Mandela. And the reason why I got a copy of this, I have a finished copy of this, a nice big heavy thing, but the reason why I sort of dismissed it at first is because my initial read of this subject is that this is partially pandering, and that almost everything about what made Nelson Mandela an interesting or even a great figure had little or nothing to do with Winnie Mandela. But obviously that's the point of this author's book. The author is clearly wants to make the case that isn't true. I should have thought of that the first time. I'm perfectly open to that case being made, so I need to put this on the May list and get it done. Then shall we finish up with a romance or two or three? These are self-published. One is by Colette Cameron. I think that I have read, I think this is the third book in a series. I think I've read at least one other, and this was fed to me by Amazon, by Kindle, by the Kindle Unlimited program. Constantly feeds me suggestions. Hey, do you know about this? Hey, do you know about that? Usually for well-designed but self-published books that I would never know about otherwise. That's why Kindle Unlimited really pays for itself. Because it introduces me to all of these things that I would never have known about, and a lot of them I end up liking. And this is a Regency romance. This is by Colette Cameron, and it's called Mission at Midnight. It's part of the Westbrook Brides series. Believe it or not, the cover designer is leading us all to believe that he is heterosexual. It's fiction, so willing suspension of disbelief and all that. And I don't know anything about this book, but I seem to remember that I've read at least one other Westbrook book, and that I liked it. That I liked it. As far as self-published romance goes, I thought it was pretty good. Then we have, this is by Tam DeRutter Jackson, and this is part of her Talisman series. Contemporary supernatural fiction, a romance, supernatural romance. Very much along the lines of the Black Dagger Brotherhood, where there's a cadre of fighting warriors, and then there's a subset of fighting women that they are predestined to fall in love with, and then there are other sects and groups of people. It's all very Twilight in that way. It's all very organized into these sects, and they all have their own mythologies and their own folklore and whatnot. And I read, the first book was called Talisman. I think it came out a few years ago and was recommended to me by Amazon. And the new one is called Rogue. Rogues are another group, another subset of people in this story, because if you're a warrior and you don't find your talisman by age 28, then you go rogue. And this is probably continuing the story of a character from the previous book. I think that it's fairly well done. I mean, these kinds of things are breathless, so you have to know what you're signing on for. But God help us, if I've signed on for the Black Dagger Brotherhood is like, what, 300 books, something like that. If I signed on for that, I can stand a little more urban fantasy romance. And then we'll finish up with this thing, also self-published. This is by Lana Petrusik, and this is The Sinner and the Scholar, a Sinner Sisterhood novel. Self-published. I believe that's an AI-generated cover. I could be wrong, but I think that's probably an AI-generated cover, which is going to revolutionize the covers on self-published books. There are free sites you can go to now where you can get something a lot better than what used to be the standard for self-published books, which is I'll have my niece draw something and have it poorly uploaded. This is very much God-bothering. I don't think that's religious fiction. I think it's meant to get under the skin of Christians. There's a secret female society. There's a secret sect at the Vatican. All that sort of Dan Brown stuff. I usually have a fairly high tolerance for that stuff, provided it's done with energy. I don't know anything about this. This book was suggested to me by Amazon, so we'll see. It could be that I will. I think this might be volume 2, something like that. You can tell. I mean, you can see the provocation, right? I mean, he's got a rosary wrapped around his bulging bicep, so that ought to give you a hint right there. We'll see if this is all just, moving these buzzwords around but not doing anything with them. Then it probably won't interest me, but I'll definitely give it a try. It's part of Kindle Unlimited. I'm already paying for Kindle Unlimited, so I just rotate through these books. Very much pays for itself. That'll be a subject of a video on its own one of these days. But anyway, those are some more May releases. There are lots more that we could talk about, lots more. But this will do. I have a lot to do for May. I am steadily keeping pace with the new releases. And a lot of these things won't be a lot of work. The romances won't take any time to read. The Jeffrey Toobin book very well may defeat me. I may not actually get past chapter 1 if I can't concentrate on what I'm not able to concentrate even now just talking about it. If I can't concentrate on what he's saying, then I just won't keep doing it. I'm not going to giggle my way through a book about Timothy McVeigh. Thank you very much. And the comic book collections, I mean, they're on the list, but I know those Daredevil issues well, and I know those Thor issues literally well enough to quote them. I can quote them to you. So I don't think I'm going to have to, they're not going to take up all that much time. My main question for them will be, do I actually acquire them? Do I want that Thor hardcover volume? When it finally does get to my local comic shop, my guy there will know that I want it. He will set one aside and ask me. I don't know if I do or not. I don't think there's any justification for it. It's too big a book for me to comfortably read, and I have it in hardcover and paperback reprints elsewhere in Odd Cottage. So the Daredevil one, I have a lot of those issues, but I don't know. We shall see. I will report back. But there was a few more May books for your consideration. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.